Meghan Markle, a smart, driven and outspoken royal.
Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, is a tour de force.
On her 40th birthday,
she has worked her way really from the bottom all the way up.
From an early age, she set about making her mark on the world and appeared in this remarkable television interview on the Nickelodeon channel.
Write letters and send them to the right people, and you can really make a difference.
In 2018, she shook up the British royal family by marrying the nation's favourite prince.
I think she saw herself as an equal to everyone in the royal family, and I think that she made that quite apparent.
But she left almost as quickly as she arrived.
She thought, I really don't think I want to keep doing this if it has to be done in the way the royal family want me to do it.
Famously, Meghan has not been afraid to speak her truth.
She found that she was constrained by traditional royal protocol, and it was made out that she was this very difficult figure behind closed doors.
Critics believe she's turned Prince Harry against his family, and that history is repeating itself.
Immediately, comparisons began to be made with Wallis Simpson, another American divorcee.
Celebrating a milestone birthday on the other side of the Atlantic, what does Meghan's future hold?
Meghan has always had political aspirations. In fact, friends have said she always wanted to be in the White House.
And how will she come to reflect on the choices that she's made?
She thought when she entered the royal family, she could shake them up and they would love it.
Saturday, 19th of May, 2018. A glorious day in Windsor, when the nation was united in celebration as American mixed-race divorcee Meghan Markle married Prince Harry and became part of the British royal family. Meghan, being a strong, independent career woman, signalled a new era for the British monarchy.
I think everybody was expecting Meghan to really change the royal family and very much modernize it.
And this was incredibly exciting because people who had always looked at the royal family and thought, they don't represent me, suddenly looked at Meghan and thought, I can see myself in her. She represents me.
It did feel like there was a possibility for positive change. I think that so many people were excited to see a woman of color marrying into the royal family. So I think that everyone did think it was a new day in the idea of equality.
Britain has, I think, this very uncomfortable history with its empire, and I think she was going to be the face of a multiracial Commonwealth moving forward together, and that's something that they hadn't been able to do before really very well.
The royal family wanted to capitalize on Meghan's outspoken, articulate nature. And
Good evening. That doesn't feel like
Meghan was known for championing women's rights. In 2015, she became a UN advocate. And when she appeared at their women's conference in New York, she gave a rousing speech.
I am proud to be a woman and a feminist.
After she joined the royal family, the palace was quick to acknowledge this, and Meghan was allowed to declare herself a proud feminist on the official royal website.
The royal family were very pleased that they could present Meghan as an ardent feminist because it looked really good for the royal family.
It soon backfired.
The thing is, this was someone who wanted to be a feminist on her own terms. She was a maverick, and it's very difficult to be a maverick in the royal family.
I think all those positive attributes that Meghan has meant that she was not willing to listen and she was not willing to learn. She wanted to do everything herself.
Within just 18 months of the wedding in May 2018, Meghan's independent and outspoken nature, that was once championed by the monarchy, had seriously clashed with its protocol. And by January 2020, she had left both the royal family and the country, taking Prince Harry with her.
It always was going to be a difficult transition to become a member of the royal family where you can't speak your opinion.
Where once she united people by joining the royal family, Meghan's choice to quit along with Harry seemed to divide the nation.
It all becomes very personal. It's all about Meghan the diva. Meghan wanting things her way or no way.
Meghan completely misread what it would be like to become a member of the royal family. Her friends had said to her, do you realise what you're getting into? The press will never leave you alone. And I Because she's this very confident, dynamic, forceful woman, she thought, I can cope with it.
Meghan's decision to air her grievances to Oprah Winfrey added fuel to the fire.
You really are having a baby.
One of her motivations for going public on Oprah was to try and force change. The Oprah interview was kind of the apotheosis of all of that, because she effectively was saying, if you're not listening to me when I talk to you privately and nothing changes, I'm going to press the nuclear button and go public.
I mean, that's the sad irony of the last 4 years, is I've advocated for so long for women to use their voice, and then I was silent.
Were you silent or were you silenced?
Any of us imagine Camilla or Kate saying, I'm going to give you my truth. It's just a grandiose way of saying my opinion.
What's very interesting to me is the reception of Meghan in the US versus the UK. The Oprah Winfrey interview had public support from people like Beyonce and Joe Biden, the president, to say he supported it. Americans perceive Meghan Markle as a victim of racism. And Brits perceive Meghan Markle as a climber, as a narcissist, as almost a kidnapper of Prince Harry.
The frank interview with Oprah revealed a number of reasons why Meghan had decided to leave the royal family with Harry.
So were you thinking of harming yourself? Were you having suicidal thoughts?
Yes, this was very, very clear. Wow. Very clear and very scary. And, I didn't know who to even turn to in that.
When she talked about the fact that she had suicidal ideations, the pressure had got so bad that she felt she couldn't go on anymore. When she was pregnant with her firstborn child, I mean, that's just horrendous, to be in that place where you just feel you cannot go on anymore. I felt very, very sorry for her.
I think that she felt it was an opportunity for her to not only share that with the world, but perhaps her hopes were that the royal family was also listening.
I think she was hoping for an apology. I think she was hoping they would phone and say, look, I'm really sorry. We now see that we pushed you too far. We should have behaved differently. We should have sat down as a family and discussed your mental health issues. I think she was horrified afterwards that the reaction was so negative from the family and that they didn't respond in the way that she wanted.
The interview with Oprah seemed to leave little room for reconciliation with the royals.
I think the amount that you expose yourself, people think of you as calculated. And being calculated, particularly in the position she's in, is not necessarily, I think, a bad thing.
Opening these conversations, having this discussion, I think the royal family has had a wake-up call. Certainly it's going to change the way things are done in future. I can be absolutely assured that the next time someone within the family has a mental health crisis, they will have everyone's attention.
Turning 40 is a landmark for Meghan, as she capitalizes on her freedom to voice her truth, uncoupled from royal protocol. But her determination to speak out was forged at an early age, when she took on one of America's corporate giants. Perhaps this was always a sign that Meghan would be a very different kind of royal.
Gloves are coming off. Women are fighting greasy pots and pans with Ivory Clear.
11-year-old Meghan was alarmed when she saw this. She was like, hang on a sec, that's not fair. Men do the washing up too.
For Meghan, that was so significant.
As Meghan Markle reaches her 40th birthday, her relationship with the royals has divided the nation. Perhaps it's no surprise. Her early home videos suggest that her personality as an outspoken, independent woman has been there since childhood. Even a substantial American corporation was no match for the 11-year-old Meghan Markle.
Meghan had her first success in challenging sexist behaviour. There was an advert for washing up liquid, and the tagline was, "Women are fighting greasy pots and pans."
The gloves are coming off. Women are fighting greasy pots and pans with Ivory Clear.
11-year-old Meghan was alarmed when she saw this. She was like, hang on a sec, that's not fair. Men do the washing up too. So she wrote to Procter & Gamble and said, this isn't fair. Can we get it changed to people?
Why shouldn't it just be everybody should be using these cleaning products? Now, don't put the woman in the box that she's just, a stay-at-home housewife.
She also contacted even Hillary Clinton who at the time was First Lady.
And they changed it to People Are Fighting Greasy Pots and Pans. She was interviewed by Nickelodeon News and became quite the star.
If you see something that you don't like or offended by on television or any other place, write letters and send them to the right people, and you can really make a difference.
You can kind of see her, like the first kind of taste for stardom, maybe. I mean, although you look at her and she's just such a really serious, solemn schoolgirl who was standing up for what she thought right. And I think that shaped a young Meghan to become the woman that she is now, someone who is used to getting what she wants, someone who is used to speaking out for what's wrong and speaking up for what's right.
For Meghan, that was so significant. She thought, I'm a little girl, nobody knows who I am, and the world has changed as a result of my actions. That has stamped her for life.
Meghan was born Rachel Meghan Markle on the 4th of August, 1981. And she grew up in Los Angeles with her mother Doria and father Thomas. Both parents were influential in moulding Meghan into the determined woman she is today. But it was her mother who had the most impact.
Doria was quite free-spirited, was also a very practiced yoga teacher, as well as a social worker. And so that kind of ethos of helping others was manifest from Meghan in an early age.
Doria pushed this idea from Meghan's earliest years that you can do, if you believe in yourself and you work hard and you're really determined, you can do whatever you want.
Principle for Meghan's whole life. But the American dream of being able to achieve anything you want is not top of the priority list for the British royal family, which brought Meghan into conflict with them.
You can't really be anything you want to be or do anything you want to do or say anything you want to say. Your duty is to the Queen. And I think that's very difficult for somebody like Meghan to switch that American dream, if you like, off and be told, right, so now you just have to do what we say. Difficult.
As she grew older, Meghan's nature was shaped more and more by her experiences of the world.
When she's growing up, she's also exposed to international issues of poverty and deprivation. Her mother takes her, for instance, to Jamaica and to Mexico when she's still quite young. And there, Meghan sees for herself the poverty on the streets, the inequality.
I think she began very quickly to think, I can do a lot of good. All Meghan's talk about wanting to help the underprivileged stems from these trips around the world where she saw the underprivileged at a very impressionable age.
She also volunteered at a soup kitchen in Los Angeles, and Doria brought her daughter up to always ask what she could do for other people.
Rather remarkable in terms of her devotion to public causes, what she thinks is wrong. And from a very young age, she's encouraged to stand up for her beliefs.
Her father, Thomas Markle, worked in the TV business and was a successful lighting director on the Emmy Award-winning sitcom Married with Children. It was Thomas who encouraged Meghan to take up acting, and she was an extra in this episode set at a school disco.
Hey, listen, Kelly gets that jeans gig and we'll call it even.
Nah, it's okay.
She was the apple of his eye, and they were very, very happy. Even when he and Doria separated, they kept on very good terms for the sake of Meghan. And in fact, Meghan lived with her father, Tom, for a number of her teenage years. He paid for her to go through private primary and then private secondary school. He also helped pay for her to go to university.
In 2003, Meghan graduated from one of the leading universities in America, Northwestern in Chicago, with a bachelor's degree in theatre and international relations. Then she turned her attention to acting. After a series of small parts, in 2011, she landed a significant role in a glossy new law drama, Suits. Her character, Rachel Zane, featured in the first 7 seasons of the show, which went on to take control of everything she did.
I think Meghan has always looked at every opportunity and seen how she can rise.
While she was filming Suits, we know that she was very outspoken about what she was wearing on telly so that it wasn't over-sexualized. She wanted to be portrayed on TV as this strong woman character, not as a sex symbol.
Her character became very popular, and she knew then that she had the power to have a voice. And at one point, she felt comfortable enough in her popularity and power to be able to say, I don't want to have any more scenes where I'm wearing just a towel. She saw that as being gratuitously sexist.
She insisted that the character not be so raunchy and be more in control of her life. What's very characteristic of Meghan is to take something and to try to change it. And we know that's what she tried to do with the royal family.
As well as celebrating the role of her dreams, 2011 was also the year Meghan married her first husband, Hollywood producer Trevor Engelson. With Meghan living and working in Toronto, and Trevor based in California, they soon drifted apart. By 2013, they had divorced. 3 years later, through mutual friends, Meghan met Prince Harry, and by November 2017, they were engaged. As the wedding drew closer, the British press asked more and more questions of the soon-to-be married couple, with an intensity Meghan hadn't known before.
Never been part of tabloid culture. I've never been in pop culture to that degree, and lived a relatively quiet life, even though I focused so much on my job. And so that was a really stark difference out of the gate.
The media started hounding Meghan's family members in America, and the bond she once had with her father would soon be broken.
Thomas had fallen on hard times, and the obvious way to make some money was to give interviews about his daughter, who was now a member of the British royal family.
He had been asked not to take part in any press interviews, but then he went against her wishes and did so.
But it was Thomas Markle's decision to collaborate with a journalist that caused the biggest controversy.
Thomas Markle fakes these photographs of him studying the history of Britain and the royal family, and it was all staged. And can you imagine, you're over here without your family, expecting them to come over for the wedding, and in the meantime, they're making money.
Thomas Markle appeared on ITV's breakfast show Good Morning Britain to give a spirited defense of his reason for staging the photos.
I didn't do this for money. I did this to change my image. For 1 whole year, I was presented as a hermit living and hiding out in Mexico. I was looking to change my image, and obviously that was a mistake. It went wrong.
He probably didn't really understand what he was doing. He probably didn't know that much about royal protocol, and he's an American, totally different mindset.
But it wasn't just her father selling stories. Meghan's half-siblings were also accused of selling out. Her half-sister Samantha took a more brash approach when she appeared on Good Morning Britain.
Let's face it, we all have to survive. Money makes the world go round. So if you want to call that cashing in, that's fine. But
And then you see them going on one newscast after another. I mean, imagine, rather than the celebrations of, the lead up to the wedding, it was all about her family members attacking her.
It's very, very difficult to have people turn on you and negative things being said about you. So I feel very sorry for her. And I think that's a very tough road to be in, because you expect your parents to be supportive of you and to be your rocks rather than to be your detractors.
It was reported that Meghan felt betrayed. It's also believed that she has not spoken to her father or siblings since. Her mother Doria was the only family member to attend the wedding.
Harry famously said, now she has the family she never had, which caused great upset with the Markles at the time, not surprisingly.
Regardless of her family troubles, after the wedding, Meghan settled into royal life. But it wasn't long before stories emerged of conflict in her new family.
It's not given that just because you're sisters-in-law, you have to be singing from the same hymn sheet.
The cracks began to show because they are very, very different.
Meghan Markle is celebrating her 40th birthday. The 3 years since her wedding have seen a seismic shift in her circumstances. Back in 2018, Meghan and Prince Harry, along with her brother and sister-in-law, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, were thought of as the Fab Four, a forward-thinking team who would be the future of the modern monarchy. Leading the charge were Meghan and Kate Middleton, who on the surface appeared to be best of friends.
Kensington Palace, of course they'd be besties. And actually, that's also what Meghan felt. She confided in a number of her friends that she hoped that Kate would help her adjust to royal life. But the cracks started to show pretty early on. Behind the scenes, Meghan was feeling a bit rebuffed. I'm not sure whether Kate ever realised. William had said to Harry before they got engaged, no need to rush this. You know, you've got all the time in the world. You don't know her that well. And I think that set the seeds.
Meghan and Kate initially, they got on very well. But they are very, very different. Kate wants to do things quietly. She wants to obey the rules. She takes advice. Meghan is a much more strident character who wants to do things her way. So this caused a rift.
It's not given that just because you're sisters-in-law, you have to become very close very quickly, or that you have to be singing from the same hymn sheet.
In November 2018, a story emerged that claimed Meghan and Kate had fallen out during the build-up to Meghan and Harry's wedding. It concerned Princess Charlotte's bridesmaid dress.
The story of Charlotte's bridesmaid dress, Meghan's wedding, is a very interesting one. We know that it was given out initially that Meghan had made Kate cry. Catherine had tried to have some influence on the bridesmaid's dress. Meghan didn't like this. Meghan made Catherine cry. Then, when we got to the point where Meghan was giving her interview to Oprah, we discovered the opposite's true, that in fact it was Kate who upset Meghan.
It wasn't long before the press started to pick up on their differences. Meghan became increasingly agitated by the headlines she was getting.
It was almost as if the British tabloid press was really pitting Meghan against Kate.
There were quite sexist portrayals and sexist descriptions of her as well, especially in contrast with the Duchess of Cambridge, Catherine. This really came to a head at the time Meghan was pregnant with Archie, when Meghan was cradling her baby bump. It was presumed by the media that she was flaunting this bump, whereas with Catherine it had been fine.
There were very definitely negative headlines about Meghan. I mean, there's a very famous comparison where Kate talked about liking avocados in her pregnancy, and they did a big, lovely piece about Kate Middleton. And then Meghan had avocados, and all of a sudden she was supporting all kinds of atrocities.
The article claimed that the huge rise in popularity of the fruit and the large sums of cash farmers were now making in South America had led to extortion and kidnappings. And in turn, therefore, Meghan was contributing to this.
So the same story was presented. To stop that happening is to simply ignore it. Complaining was pointless. You make a big stink about it. All that happens is the story just runs and runs and runs.
Despite the negative headlines, Meghan's passion for helping others was making headway with the public.
In the early stages of her time as a British royal, it seemed that the public really warmed to her. The fact that she was doing things differently, that she lent the royal family a new edge in its relations with the greater British population. For example, we saw this after the Grenfell Tower fire, where she, alongside women that were affected by that disaster, released a cookbook to raise money for the victims of the fire. She brought a certain magic to her public appearances.
Meghan's campaigning for the underprivileged, especially for girls and women in countries where girls and women are either oppressed or neglected. I think being a member of the royal family, it was a natural fit for her.
I think we did have a moment where, right, okay, she's settled in. She's wearing the stockings. She's laughing with the Queen. She's putting her best foot forward, and great. The dust seems to be settling.
But the criticism in the press resurfaced, with accusations of diva-like behaviour and flouting royal etiquette.
Initially, it was for relatively harmless, very small things. For example, she broke protocol by walking ahead of Harry at one event.
It was almost as if everything that Meghan did was magnified to the point if she opened up a car door for herself, it was like, oh my gosh, she's a real feminist. She's not following royal protocol and having somebody else open the door for her.
She would have thought, well, these are just stuffy little pointless rules that the royal family have. She'd have just thought, well, why can't I open my own car door? What on earth's thing to make a fuss about?
In some ways, Meghan's wish or insistence to do things her own way highlighted how stuffy and out of touch the royal family are.
She found that she was constrained by traditional royal protocol and that she couldn't do things in the way that she'd hoped to. And it was made out that she was this very difficult figure behind closed doors.
So I think it was the perception around it of this American go-getter, self-sufficient feminist coming over here and doing things the way that she's always been used to. And that was perceived as aggressive.
Information began to trickle out that she wasn't towing the line. The fact that she wanted to do things differently was causing problems for the royal family. She didn't want to obey the rules. And I think she came across sometimes, and this is increasingly true,
striking to come into the class situation of Britain and to see how firmly entrenched it is. And I imagine that it must have been quite shocking for Meghan because I think as a black woman, you don't think anyone is above your station.
Meghan was then accused of getting involved in politics, a move frowned upon in royal circles.
We see how Meghan, both in Fiji, for instance, as well as in Wellington, New Zealand, rubs shoulders with politicians like the New Zealand Prime Minister, and she talks about women's empowerment, and she talks about women's suffrage. Of course, royals traditionally never do that.
I think it began to go wrong when Meghan made it clear that there was a political element to her interest. And I think that began to make people feel in the royal family that she was perhaps, just going a bit too far, because they just don't want to politicise these things, because traditionally, and quite rightly, the royal family has stayed out of the political arena.
Some of the stories written about her couldn't have been further from the truth.
They presented this story as a rags to riches story. Meghan, like Cinderella, had started off at this terrible place, and now she was living in a palace in London. And Meghan quite rightly complained and said, actually, Compton was about 15 miles from where she really grew up. She grew up in a middle-class suburb. And so she said that, this had racist overtones because it was suggesting that, the black gangland area of Los Angeles was where she started life.
There was nothing discreet about this characterisation. And so she had to navigate what was a racialised coverage of her public image. The British tabloid media's characterisation of Meghan, the headline, Meghan straight out of Compton, was overtly racist in its description.
Despite the negative press coverage throughout the winter of 2018 and early 2019, Meghan was still well thought of by the public. On the 6th of May that year, Meghan and Harry's son Archie was born.
I think Archie's birth was the real turning point in terms of Meghan's popularity.
Royal protocol is such that the couple would let the British press know when Meghan went into labor. That is what's always been done because it's newsworthy. And they would have an idea of when the baby was born. They would have a name and hopefully a photo call. Meghan instead went into labor. She went to the private hospital. The press was not notified of anything until the baby was actually safely delivered and they were resting at home.
Past precedent has been for royal mothers to pose with their newborn babies, was not to give birth there, and instead went to the Portland hospital. But the public still hoped to see a photo.
She wouldn't pose on the steps with their newborn child. The general public felt a bit cheated.
This was expected, and when it wasn't given, I think that's when a real uproar started as far as, well, wait a minute, we're paying for your lifestyle. All we want is a picture of your baby.
What really irritated the British public was the public had just funded an enormous renovation of Frogmore Cottage for the couple. Through taxpayer money, it was like £2 million to renovate their home, and they weren't even entitled to know about the birth until it was done.
Meghan said She was never asked for a photo when they left the hospital. But 2 days after giving birth, the world did finally get to meet baby Archie.
I don't think they made a mistake in not giving the public what they wanted at that time, because of course, once people got to see the baby, they were happy. And in the end, isn't that really what matters?
He has the sweetest temperament. He's really calm and...
He gets that from.
It was a very intimate, tender scene, but it wasn't what the British public expected. And in some respects, the media really emphasised that Harry and Meghan aren't playing ball, that they're not doing things as expected.
It was another example of Meghan choosing to follow her own path instead of royal tradition. Meghan enjoyed a respite from criticism in September 2019 when she took Archie on the royal tour of South Africa.
Meghan and Harry have a remarkably successful visit with Archie to South Africa. And of course, they famously meet Archbishop Desmond Tutu on that visit. And on many occasions, Meghan, is allowed to do her own thing, to go and meet women in the townships and talk about violence against women.
It did produce far more positive press coverage. We were able to see Meghan, as it were, at her best.
Meghan stood on a tree stump and gave really quite a powerful speech.
I am here with you as a mother, as a wife, as a woman of color, and as your sister.
Here she was saying, yes, I might have married into the most famous and wealthy family in the world, but I'm still one of you. She wasn't being too political, but she was using her own experience to say, I want to be your figurehead and I want to be here to help.
Behind the scenes, Meghan seemed to be unhappy. The signs of strain were first visible during an interview she gave midway through the tour.
She was obviously quite...
Thank you for asking, because not many people have asked if I'm okay. But it's a very real thing to be going through behind the scenes.
The pressure you're under is pretty obvious. Can you continue with it?
It's not enough to just survive something, right? Like, that's not the point of life. You've got to thrive. You've got to feel happy. And I think...
Which takes everyone really by surprise, because we all think that she is happy, that she is thriving, that she is doing what she wants to do.
It was such a direct criticism of the royal family. She was effectively saying, look, I have problems and nobody in the royal family cares.
That was a real turning point for everyone, to hear them say something like that, not just in whispers, not just as often is done through palace leaks. It was quite brave.
It had quite a backlash. Here Harry and Meghan were in one of the most impoverished continents on the earth, and they had visited some of the townships where some of the most dispossessed and poverty-stricken people lived. And Meghan was complaining that people hadn't asked her if she was okay.
When people are feeling very unhappy, it does rather take over your every waking thought. So it might be that, she just felt she had to get it out.
There were some who say that Meghan actually ruined the tour. They certainly ruined the goodwill from the tour by making it about themselves.
This latest batch of negativity was the last straw, and Meghan was about to make a decision that would shock the nation.
She thought, I really don't think I want to keep doing this if it has to be done in the way the royal family want me to do it.
She realized, I have to leave here.
And they go to Canada. And that was the beginning of the end.
When it became clear that Meghan's personality might not be compatible with the British royal family, her only option seemed to be a break with tradition. This wasn't the first time an American divorcee rocked the British monarchy by seeming to steal away a beloved royal. The appearance of Wallis Simpson on the arm of King Edward VIII in the 1930s led to his abdication, as he chose love over duty. Royal watchers believe that Meghan's relationship with Harry could be a case of history repeating itself.
When an American divorcee arrived on the royal scene in the 21st century, immediately comparisons began to be made with Wallis Simpson, another American twice divorced by the time she married Edward VIII. And Wallis
Mrs. Simpson became notorious as the femme fatale who swooped in and deprived the nation of a popular king. Is it fair to compare her with Meghan, or are the only parallels their nationality and marital status?
Both women were very strong-minded, and both women had the unadulterated adoration of their husbands.
They had this distinctive modern style, which sort of sets them apart from other members of the royal family. And, most of all, it's clear that in the case of Harry and in the case of Edward VIII, these British royals have fallen desperately in love with these American women. There's a real sort of storm of interest around the two relationships, partly because of this sort of dynamic quality to them.
Mrs. Simpson was a strong, dominant woman who gave Edward VIII everything his mother hadn't given him. He was vulnerable just as Harry's vulnerable. If a man who's not very decisive meets a very decisive woman, or the other way round, they often get on very well because one makes the decisions and the other one goes along with it. So Meghan and Harry, they work because Harry is quite a vulnerable person. He's only lived in this gilded cage. He's not very worldly. Meghan makes things happen. Meghan makes the decisions. Even Harry said, famously, what Meghan wants, Meghan gets. That's, as it were, coming from the horse's mouth.
As Wallis Simpson had learned to her cost decades earlier, the British don't always warm to an outsider who causes disruption in the royal household.
Edward was British property, if you like, and Harry was also seen as British property. Anybody foreign coming along and stealing them away is bound to be viewed with suspicion.
However easy it is to compare Wallis and Meghan, their personalities and ambitions seem vastly different.
Certainly British history has always depicted Wallis Simpson as the villainess, the American who spirited away the king, who gave up his kingship for love. And what a mistake he made. Was he ever happy? You know, outcast from his friends, from his family. I mean, he came back to the UK a couple of times, but I don't think Wallis ever was allowed to darken the shores of England ever again. And so inevitably there's a rather simplistic and cliched wish to shoehorn Meghan into that same role.
Wallis Simpson seemed not to have drive to be anything other than rich and famous. And I feel that Meghan wanted to work. She wanted to work, she wanted to have a career, and she has adapted her career to suit her skills, her talents, and also the position that she's in, which I think is evidence of her respect for her husband's family. She's some of the things that she's done and some of the things she's believed in a way that would be respectful of her husband's family, which I think is extremely admirable.
While Wallis and Edward were effectively sent into exile by the royal family, in 2020, Meghan and Harry took control of their own lives and relocated to Vancouver. The move shocked not only the media but also the royal family. Initially, the Sussexes shared the same ambition as Edward, to pursue royal duties while living away from Britain.
Originally, Edward had wanted to have a more dynamic role as a representative of the royal family abroad, living in the USA or living in Europe, but his brother, George VI, the new king, and the king's courtiers denied him that more dynamic role. Occasionally he'd pop back up, he'd write a series of newspaper articles talking about his earlier life, talking about the abdication crisis. That made him a bit of money, and then he sort of disappeared again. In the case of Harry and Meghan, they now exist on the periphery of the wider royal family, and yet they've embraced new dynamic roles. They want to do things for themselves. They want to make their own money. They want to embrace new philanthropic opportunities and promote new causes.
At first, moving to Canada seemed perfect. It was familiar to Meghan from her years filming Suits, and as part of the Commonwealth, it was an ideal place to represent the royal family.
One of the reasons that Meghan and Harry first went to Canada is because it's a Commonwealth country. And remember, when they were in Canada, this is when the negotiations were starting. Right, we're in a Commonwealth country. We want to make this work. We want our privacy. But at the same time, we want to become financially independent. But we can still serve the Queen and do our duty to the Queen by staying in a Commonwealth country. And I think that they thought they must have had a good shot at it.
It was given out that, they wanted to protect Archie. from presumably press, from all the tensions in the family and from press intrusion. But I think to royal watchers, it looked very much like a temporary arrangement and something that hadn't been thought out.
I think they had reached a point where they had decided that being a royal wasn't going to really work. They wanted to get away from the press intrusion. Now he had a child, he was determined that he was going to protect his son and also his wife. And obviously it was a joint decision for them to go. They went to Canada to decide what they were going to do next.
The press dubbed the move as Megxit and seemed keen to lay the blame for the couple's departure at Meghan's door. Meghan was portrayed.
It was all her decision. She was forcing Harry to do that. That was massively simplistic. It was a decision taken by both of them. She was offering him a better way of doing things, a different way of doing things. And he decided that for the future of his family, he would take that with both hands and run with it. So I think it's massively sexist, actually, to blame this all on Meghan. The seeds were already there. Harry wanted out. Meghan just gave him the reason and the mechanism for doing it.
Megxit. It makes it sound like she is the reason that they exited. Look at the name, Megxit. But we know from, speeches that Harry has given, he has said, and very adamantly, I made the decision for my wife and son to leave. I made the decision for them.
While the move to Canada was a happy medium between private life and public duty for the Sussexes, the consequences proved to be far from straightforward.
When Meghan and Harry went to Canada, there seemed to be a sort of an unholy scrap over what they could call themselves, what they could do. They wanted to be Sussex Royal, because, again, this is an American culture thing coming in via Meghan. She, having crossed the Atlantic to Canada, began to think, look, we've got to be a brand, that terrible word that the royal family would always think, oh my God, they're talking about brands, it's awful. So they wanted to be Sussex Royal. Then they were told they couldn't be Sussex Royal, they couldn't use that, and they couldn't be HRHs. It was the royal family again saying to them, because clearly Meghan and Harry hadn't checked, you can't just carry on with the titles that you had when you were working members of the royal family.
Any form of commercial venture risked bringing the monarchy into disrepute if it didn't fit with, if you like, the monarchy's remit of public operations back in Britain. So I think Harry and Meghan wanted to exercise more freedom. Their way of doing that was moving away from Britain, moving away from the royal family, essentially resigning from the firm.
I think when they went to Canada and they discovered the Canadians didn't want to pay for their security and the Duchy of Lancaster didn't want to pay while they were there, I think they were both upset and astonished. And when Meghan and Harry gave the impression that they were hard done by, again, this produced a lot of negative press coverage because they have a great deal of money. Apart from not being given the security, they had to repay several million for the refurbishment of Frogmore Cottage, where obviously that had been paid by the taxpayer, so suddenly they had to pay that. And I don't think
Meghan made with Harry to retain their royal status while enjoying personal freedom. They hadn't reckoned on the Queen's strict devotion to the rules. Being half in and half out of the royal family would never be an option.
We've seen it time and time again in the royal family. It's difficult to have love and duty work simultaneously together, right? Very, very difficult. And I think, obviously, that is what Harry and Meghan wanted in their negotiations with the Queen, was this love and duty sort of synergy. We can make it work. And the Queen put her foot down and said, no, it's either love and you step down, or it's duty and you stay on.
Having failed to find an ongoing royal role, the next logical step for Meghan was to return to her Californian roots and take control of her destiny. Yet her next move with Harry caused an outcry almost never seen in the history of the monarchy.
Some people might wonder whether or not Meghan may live to regret all of the revelations in the Oprah interview. Oprah herself said later she was surprised that Meghan said some of the things that she did.
After a few short, turbulent months in Canada, it was time for the Sussexes to regroup and start again. Returning to the UK was impossible. The obvious location to settle was California, the place Meghan knows best, free from the shackles of duty. Here she could use all her contacts and media know-how to turn the Sussexes from exiled royals into a successful and profitable brand. America welcomed the Sussexes with open arms.
There's this very determined, forceful woman who wants to make as big a splash and probably make as much money as possible as soon as she can. And so it's easier to do that in California with her connections than it would have been to do it in Canada. Also, I think the press reaction in America to this was that Meghan's come home, she's been badly treated by the British royal family. I think she's got a lot, it's a much more positive coverage, not universally so. I think some sections of American society thought she couldn't hack it, and that's why she's gone back. So I think it's a slightly mixed picture.
Many people who, in particular in America, who are royalists, they would have always wanted, especially one of Princess Diana's sons, to actually live there. So this isn't just any royal. This is Princess Diana's son. She was on the cover of People magazine 57 times, right? The most out of any other person in the world. So his American wife, his half American, half British son, in one sense was just like too good to be true.
No time was wasted in striking new deals and branching out into previously forbidden territory. But they now faced competition from the myriad of Hollywood A-listers with causes to promote.
So Meghan and Harry have been busy since they moved to California. They've struck a number of deals. We know Netflix, they had a podcast, a deal with Spotify. Meghan's had a children's book released. Harry's taken on a job in mental health, sort of coaching at a big startup in the Silicon Valley. They have done a lot of things. However, none of them will ever have the attention of the world the way, say, their tour of South Africa did, the way, say, their wedding did. They will not be meeting with of state. They will not be having a global platform from which to have a voice. Yes, they have a charitable foundation, but so do a lot of celebrities. And they're now celebrities. There is no way that they won't have keenly felt the difference between being a celebrity and being a royal. They're not in the same league.
The glare of publicity was still firmly trained on the former royals, at a level far greater than Meghan would have experienced during her acting career.
Because of the royal brand, they can get all these multi-million-dollar deals. But the problem with that is that they have to keep reminding everyone that they're royal. And to do so, that means giving more and more away. They have to talk about more private moments.
Harry and Meghan have consistently argued that they don't have sufficient privacy, that their lives are difficult and burdensome because of the glare of the media's limelight. Then they go to the US, this narrative continues until they suddenly open up about everything by agreeing to an interview with Oprah Winfrey. And suddenly this idea of privacy completely goes out of the window. They are instead opening up very publicly, in the most public of fora, knowing that millions of people around the world are going to tune in to see and get a glimpse of the inside story behind Harry and Meghan's separation from the House of Windsor.
Any hope of living a quiet life ended in March 2021. In the now infamous Oprah Winfrey interview, Meghan made shocking claims of being silenced by the royal institution.
There was something Oprah said which I found absolutely astonishing in the interview. She asked Meghan, were you silent or were you silenced?
Were you told to keep silent? How were you told to handle tabloids or gossip? Were you told to say nothing?
Everyone in my world was given very clear directive from the moment the world knew Harry and I were dating.
But what I want to say about that is anyone who knows anything about the royal history, all the royals are silenced. None of them can say what they think. They can't go meet some head of state and then later say, I didn't like him. They're all silenced. That's why they're here. That's why they're in power. That's why they never got beheaded. They're all silenced, all of them. So for Meghan to be silenced is no different than how Prince William is silenced. Why is it okay for them not to be able to express an opinion, but not for her?
It's difficult to really pinpoint why they did it. But I think one of the main reasons that most people can agree on is that they're angry. They're angry at the royal family and how Meghan was treated. And that's all coming out even after the Oprah interview.
You know, some people might wonder whether or not Meghan may live to regret all the revelations in the Oprah interview. Oprah herself said later she was surprised that Meghan said some of the things that she did.
I think the problem for Meghan was she was angry, she's upset. I think she thought when she entered the royal family, she could shake them up and they would love it. They would do things Meghan's way. And when that didn't happen, you know, and she came up against what she sees as the forces of reaction, it made her so upset that that interview was her way. And I think it was the only way she could see to get her revenge and put the case as she saw it. I think later on she'll think, you know, I shouldn't have burnt my bridges to that extent.
I mean, don't forget, the only member of family that she really sees is her mother, Doria. She doesn't see any of her father's family. And Archie and Lilibet, grow up without seeing any of their cousins. I think perhaps she may regret being quite so public with that Oprah interview, because that is there for posterity. That is there forever.
Despite the damage caused to their family ties, there are glimmers of hope for a reconciliation.
If in 10 years' time, we have a change of regime, we've got King Charles, the relationship between Meghan and Charles was once so good. I mean, Charles adored her. They had a lot in common, art, music. She used to go around to Clarence's house to have effectively history lessons with Charles on the history of the royal family. Both Meghan and Charles really enjoyed that. Charles is a real passionate historian. Meghan thirsts for knowledge. They had a really good relationship. Now that relationship's pretty much in tatters.
Meghan seems intent on making the best use of her unique situation to raise her young family and ensure that her business ventures are successful.
Had they remained members of the royal family, that would have been fine. They would have carried on doing all their good works. But now they've got that extra, their reputation has an extra spin. They want to be, and I think the aura around that will carry them a long way in all their financial dealings, their commercial deals. That will work. They're sort of the renegade royals, you know, that actually counts for a lot.
Hitting 40, Meghan seems to have achieved many of her goals. A platform on the world stage, marriage and 2 children, and a comfortable home. But will that be enough?
She doesn't want to go and be Mrs. Mountbatten Windsor, raising her chickens and growing her own organic veg. She wants to be a superstar. She wants to be this change maker. She wants to be this disruptor.
Now 40, Meghan's impact on the way we view the royal family remains a topic of intense scrutiny. Recent royal events mean there could be opportunities to reconcile the Sussexes with the Windsors.
Since the death of Prince Philip, there has been a lot of media speculation, as we might have expected, about whether there could be some form of reconciliation between the Sussexes on the one hand and the rest of the family. And we kind of got a flavour of that when Harry travelled back to Britain for his grandfather's funeral. And we saw something very similar with the recent birth of Harry and Meghan's second child, Lilibet. Whether that happy family event might be the opportunity, might provide the window for some form of reconciliation. As yet, the jury is out.
Meghan's royal in-laws aren't the only people with whom relations are strained.
Given the emphasis that Meghan and Harry have always placed on the importance of a loving family structure, I think it's really unfortunate that Meghan's own relationships, particularly with her father and his side of the family, seem to have really broken down. But there is some hope now that she is back home, as it were, in California, and he's not too far away physically, that after the pandemic, maybe the two can meet and try and make their relationship work. If not for themselves, then certainly for both Lilibet and Archie.
Why wouldn't you want to work on reconciling with your family? Because, you know, at the end of the day, family is, in one sense, it can be your real stability, and it's what we all, at the end of the day, come back to. We do. We always come back to our family.
For all of the controversy, a time may come again when, rather than the villainess of the story,
Meghan will continually be, in some sections of the public consciousness and the media, be portrayed as this kind of villain who has taken Harry away. I personally think that's too simplistic. I think that Meghan and Harry were very unhappy in their life, and so they wanted to make the change to make a more positive change. I think the problem for Meghan is that they complained about intrusion, about privacy, but actually she didn't want a quiet life. She doesn't want to go and be Mrs. Mountbatten Windsor, raising her chickens and growing her own organic veg. She wants to be a superstar. She wants to be this change maker. She wants to be this disruptor. So to do that, you have to have a very high public profile. And to have that public profile, you have to trade in on those royal connections. And to do that will mean that she will alienate her in-laws even more.
There's very little question in my mind that Meghan will be viewed as a villain. What you have to understand is that the British public really loves Harry. They don't want to see Harry as a betrayer. It's far easier to blame this other woman who's a foreigner, but a lot of people still believe that Harry will come back. A lot of people in the UK believe that Meghan and Harry will not be together in 10 years, and Harry will make his way back home.
It seems clear that Meghan has shown Harry a way to achieve an independence he could never have as part of the royal family, even if he risks the same fate as Edward VIII.
Meghan has given Harry the sort of freedom he probably never imagined that he would be able to enjoy. But I think when the novelty wears off and he realises that, as his great-great-uncle Edward VIII realised, that he will be a lost soul. He does have a sort of nominal role in America, a nominal job, but it's very difficult to lead an ordinary life when you're Prince Harry.
As Meghan turns 40, despite all the criticism, her impact as a modern independent woman during her short time in the royal family is certain to have a lasting legacy.
She's a strong woman who has made her own career. She's self-made, and she always had a philanthropic bent and an activist bent, and I think that's always admirable.
She's a deeply impressive woman. When I met her, I really liked her. She is funny, smart, witty, incredibly glamorous, self-effacing, kind. She's all of those things. And she is, in some ways, a great role model for young women, and as a career way that anyone ever thought.
One of the most positive outcomes of this whole Meghan, Harry divorce, as it were, from the royal family could be that the institution of the monarchy now takes a really close, hard look at many of the issues that have been highlighted recently about, the role of women, about being given freedom, about equality, and so on, and also about, of course, race. And perhaps if change needs to be made, now might be the opportunity to begin to do that.
Meghan seems destined to continue her path as a force for change. The true extent of her powers remains to be seen, but there seems to be no doubt that the sky is the limit.
I think at age 40 that Meghan has what appears from the outside to be an extremely nice life. She has 2 lovely, healthy children. She has a husband who seems to love her and who she seems to love. And she has an organization that she is building that is going to be able to accomplish some of the things that she seems to have been trying to accomplish for all of her life.
I think what we're going to see from Meghan for her next act is going to definitely be something political. There have already been rumors, because she met with California Governor Gavin Newsom not that long ago, that Meghan is considering a run for something in the very near future. Meghan has always had political aspirations. In fact, friends have said she always wanted to be in the White House.
That she's in her happy environment, an environment she knows really well. I think her determination that goes all the way back to her extraordinary childhood where she was able to persuade a huge company to change its policy, that's carried her through to age 40, and it will carry her through for many more years, because I think she sincerely believes that she can make a difference to people who are not in the sort of privileged position she finds herself in.
Official royal website.
The royal family were very pleased that they could present Meghan as an ardent feminist because it looked really good for the royal family.
It soon backfired.
The thing is, this was someone who wanted to be a feminist on her own terms. She was a maverick, and it's very difficult to be a maverick in the royal family.
I think all those positive attributes that Meghan has meant she was not willing to listen, and she was not willing to learn. She wanted to do everything herself.
Within just 18 months of the wedding in May 2018, Meghan's independent and outspoken nature, that was once championed by the monarchy, had seriously clashed with its protocol. And by January 2020, she had left both the royal family and the country, taking Prince Harry with her.
It always was going to be a difficult transition to become a member of the royal